Have you ever felt like trying to communicate with a team member at work is like speaking a foreign language, even if you're not? Stay tuned today on Moxie Talk. We are going to unpack how to talk to anyone at work, specifically understanding and navigating communication styles. Hi everyone, I'm Fia Fassbinder and welcome to Moxie Talk, where we help you find your voice, share your message, and lead with confidence. Today we are going to be talking about communication styles that will help you in the workplace and your personal life. But before we do, if you are watching me on YouTube, please make sure to hit that alert button so you get notified anytime I put out a new video. Also, if you find value in this video, please make sure to like it, share it, and subscribe to our channel. Okay, here we go. Today, we will be talking about the different communication styles that you may run into. Now, you may think that language and communication are pretty basic and simple. Nevertheless, everyone has their own unique communication style. Today, we're going to discover the many different styles of communication, why some are better than others, and how you can develop your own communication style. Also, how you can adapt that communication style to the style of others. First, let's talk about the different communication styles. There are 4 broad categories. Category number 1 is assertiveness. I want you to pretend that I am holding a chart where at one end we have the word passive, and at the other hand we have the word aggressive. This is the broad spectrum where all communication styles fall. Where are the best communication styles on that spectrum? They are found right in the middle. Effective communication styles are a balance of being direct without being damaging, and this communication style is what we call assertiveness. Assertive communications is open, honest, and respectful communication. They establish boundaries and their wants and needs, and they communicate to those around them in a way that doesn't sacrifice the wants and needs of others. Assertive communicators often have the shortest path to leadership positions because they are the kind of leaders that people want to follow. They're clear about what needs to be done, but at the same time, they respect and dignify their peers. I've put together an entire assertive communication video series that talks about assertiveness in general and what it means to be an assertive communicator as a female professional in specific. So feel free to check out those videos and that playlist if you want to deep dive into assertive communication. It's true that assertiveness doesn't come to most people naturally. But when practiced effectively and with respect for the needs and wants of others, there are very few, if any, obstacles to collaboration and healthy relationships inside and outside the workplace. So if assertiveness is that sweet spot in the middle, what kind of communication styles do we still find at the opposite ends of the spectrum? At one extreme end, we find the second communication style, which is passiveness. The passive communicator has trouble saying something directly and outright. They might drop clues about what they want, but they don't actually come out and say it. Maybe you can think of some people in your professional or personal life that are passive communicators. A passive person might sit next to you every day at lunch and eye your half-eaten sandwich that you're not going to finish and say, "It looks really good," instead of simply saying that they're hungry and they'll take it if you're not going to eat it. The problems arise with the passive communicator when others simply don't get their clues. Their minds don't follow the same line of reasoning as the passive communicator, and the cluelessness of the listeners might be interpreted as indifference or hostility. This can cause the passive communicator to become resentful. And when they behave resentfully towards the people in their lives, nobody understands why. This behavior seems to be coming out of left field, and so the would-be listeners become resentful as well. Passive communication is extremely ineffective. It demands that everyone around you think like detectives and read between the lines, which is not only exhausting, but impossible. Passive communicators also may not communicate at all, preferring to be the ones that sit back and take notes instead of making contributions. Now, this may be handy during a meeting, But in a situation where there needs to be a broad pool of perspectives and contributions, it doesn't work so well. The passive communicator will often find that their needs and wants are rarely seen, respected, or met, just for the simple fact that nobody knows what those are in the first place. Then you have the communicators that are at the opposite extreme of the spectrum from the passive communicators, and those are the aggressive communicators, which is the third communication style. Now, there are degrees of aggressiveness, but at their worst, these people are like a runaway freight train. They don't care who is in their way. They don't care how much damage they do. They're human wrecking balls. They only care about what they want and how they're going to get it. Now, where passive communicators undermine the workplace culture, aggressive communicators demolish it. They make their colleagues feel disregarded and invisible, not a productive communication style. There's a fourth category that combines both extremes of our chart, and it's called passive-aggressive. But wouldn't the two styles balance each other out? Not necessarily. Passive-aggressive communicators are still indirect. They still don't fully articulate what it is they want or need, but when others don't piece together the clues that they drop, they make digs at those people around them through negative expressions such as sarcasm, silence, or petty actions. Those are the big ones, but there are even more specific styles within each category. Take formal and informal communication. There's the way you speak at a board meeting, and there's the way you speak at a barbecue. That's the difference between formal and informal. Formal is best used for professional settings or situations. Informal is used in a variety of settings, but the more serious or somber the occasion, for instance, a high-stakes meeting, the riskier it would be to use informal communication. At the same time, informal communication tends to excite people or arouse their interest and connect them to you, whereas formal communication can make people tune out when it's used too much. Speaking isn't the only style of communication we can use. There's also written communication. Writing can be just as assertive, passive, or aggressive as a speech that's spoken. So spoken or written, words have weight. We can't be careless when we use them, and we have to pay attention to which communication style we're using, even in writing. Also, any communication style can be analytical or emotional. It either gets us thinking or feeling. Two colleagues are discussing a new marketing campaign. The analytical colleague says, "Competitor X boosted sales by 20% using humor. Our audience might respond well to that." The emotional colleague says, "Their campaign sucked and had no soul." See how one is driven by logic and the other by emotion? It's a skill to know how and when to use both. So why do some people choose a passive style of communication? How hard can it be to just say, "Hey, this is how it is," or "Hey, I need XYZ," or "Hey, I can't take on any additional work," or "I just don't have the time right now"? Again, we are shaped by the people and places we've been and the things we feel. Passive communicators may want to avoid potential conflict, discomfort, or disapproval at all costs. They prioritize maintaining harmony and inclusion over expressing their own needs or opinions. A fear of being rejected or disliked if they speak up may be causing them to stay silent. Negative experiences too, like bullying or emotional abuse, or simply being told that it's not okay to be assertive, can create a belief that assertiveness leads to negative consequences, which in turn leads to a passive approach to communication. So how should you go about making a communication style for yourself? One that suits you but doesn't create complications like being too passive or too aggressive. The first step is becoming self-aware. One of the best ways to find out what's right and wrong about your communication is by asking for feedback. We have self-biases and blind spots. Sometimes the only way to know how we come off is if someone tells us. So the more open to feedback you can be, the better. Also, try to observe yourself and your communication in different situations. What works? What creates challenges? Try to think like a listener who doesn't know you. Second, be as clear, concise, and thorough as possible in your communication. Assertive communicators aren't vague and they don't beat around the bush. For example, instead of telling your colleague the last client wasn't happy with the project, tell them which client, which project, what they didn't like, and what might be done to fix the problem. That way, you're not chasing each other for more information all day. But no matter how good you get at talking, set aside time for listening. You can't play catch with two people who want to pitch a ball to each other at the same time. Someone has to be prepared to catch. There's a skill called active listening, and it will do wonders for your communication game and your workplace relationships. Instead of listening just to answer, listen to understand. Be fully invested in what you're hearing. Repeating the information back in your own words is also a way of demonstrating that you are listening. This is also what makes people around you feel heard, which wins you a ton of respect. Also be aware of your non-verbal communication. If your body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice don't align with what you're saying, your true meaning will get lost. Saying good morning with a bright smile means one thing, but saying good morning with a frown and a glare says something entirely different. Now, I've done several videos on nonverbal communication if you want to explore body language any further. Keep applying these tips and you will eventually have a communication style that boosts your success both professionally and personally. But before we end this video, let's talk about what happens when you're working with a lot of people that aren't actively working on their own communication styles. How can you adopt the communication styles of others with as little friction as possible? The key is adapting to the communication styles of others. Make it a point to show respect and empathy. If you have someone who is aggressive or it's like pulling teeth getting them to answer you and give you vital information, don't write them off as unintelligent or horrible. They're human beings and they're learning and unlearning as they go, just like we are. Never talk down to anyone just because you don't understand someone's style of communication. Try to see beneath the layers of anger or passive aggressiveness or passiveness to the emotion underneath. When appropriate, you can try matching the energy of the people you talk to. Are they fiery and high-spirited? Match their enthusiasm. Get excited with them. But if you've got someone who is low-key, calm, and quiet, you might want to save the Tony Robbins energy for later. Match their calmness with a lower energy demeanor. Next, adjust your levels of formality and directness. Sometimes this is determined by the comfort zone of the people you're talking to. Sometimes it's determined by the situation you're in. Finally, be mindful of any cultural differences. Some cultural norms place a lot of emphasis on respect for elders, even if the age difference is just a few years. If you speak Spanish, for example, there's an entirely different set of words and verb forms that you use for someone older or in authority. Now, minding these cultural norms in communicating shows respect and prevents misunderstandings. And there is a ton of good content out there on cultural norms specific to the various cultures you may want to learn about. So brush up on this if you need to communicate with people from different cultural backgrounds. Ultimately, we want to try and see if someone else's communication style as a chance to learn and grow. Different styles bring different perspectives to the table, whether it's just the boardroom table or the dinner room table, and it's what keeps our journey fascinating. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to like it, share it, subscribe to our channel, and hit that alert button if you are watching me on YouTube. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, make sure to lead boldly, live brilliantly, and speak with moxie.